All right, I'd like to welcome on a very special guest for this special episode of the Blakey Lock Show. It's Doogs from Barstool Sports. Doogs, what's up?
Not much. Thanks for having me on, man. Pretty excited to talk ball with you, talk all things that kind of happened with this Divine Providence documentary.
Yeah, so I feel like I was just saying before we started recording, this kind of happened at like the perfect time where like the Providence Georgetown game was Saturday. I feel like everybody had eyes on it, with Cooley coming back to Providence for the first time, and then NFL conference championship games on Sunday. And then all this stuff started happening on Monday, where there's like now 2 weeks until there's another football game and people need something to talk about. And then this documentary happened and everything with Goodman and all this stuff around this documentary. And I wanted first of all, like somebody to just kind of fill me in on like the details just for
sure.
myself. And then I also saw a bunch of people that were like a bunch of people that I follow that are tweeting like, can somebody explain this Goodman thing to me in like a simple way, because like it's too much to kind of figure out what's going on. And I know you're very much in the middle of it. You and Rico Bosco and Healthy Debates, you guys were there on the scene at the game and then involved in all this stuff that's kind of fallen out. And like Dave has been involved with the guy that made the documentary, kind of like putting it out there. So I thought you were the perfect guy to have on to talk about this. And also shout out to Greer, the machine gun Mike Greer. I was talking to him about it. And I was like, I kind of want to talk about it on my podcast. And he said, you should have Doogs on to talk about it. So that was
Machine Gun said that?
He did, yeah.
Wow, that means a lot coming from Greer. Shout out Greer.
Yeah,
he's a great guy.
Yeah, he's the best.
I mean, before we even dive into that, I don't know if I'm the perfect guy to explain this. I'm definitely a little biased towards, because you're saying like, I don't think people are going to want a simple, and we'll dive into it, but I think people are going to want a simple way to wrap their head around this. There's no simple way to wrap around this whole entire story.
Yeah. No, it's a very like emotionally driven thing, like from both sides. Like there's so much emotion and like bias involved. Nobody could like totally unbiased be like, this is what I think. Cause everybody can hear the story or watch the documentary and be like, either like, oh, this guy's a piece of shit or this guy's a piece of shit. Like you could say the guy that made the documentary is totally biased and like he was taking shots, or you could be like Ed Cooley's like total dick. Like there's so many ways you could look at it. So I know you're biased. We'll try to somewhat present both sides of it so people can kind of decide for themselves. But
sure.
I think the only way to talk about it is with like some bias, because the story is so like emotionally driven that I think it's the way to do it. So we're gonna, just to start off, in case anybody doesn't even really know what's going on with this thing. It starts with Ed Cooley, who is the head basketball coach at Providence, is a Providence guy, took that job, was there for over a decade, right? Like 12 years.
12 years, yeah, since 2011.
And ended up leaving Providence at the end of last season for Georgetown, who's one of their Big East rivals. And people were really mad about it. And he said he was going to be the coach for life at Providence and all this different stuff, and kind of went against the program, obviously. And I feel like it was a big deal when he moved, and then people were kind of not talking about it just because people weren't talking about college basketball for the whole summer and leading up to the fall. And then when this game happened with Cooley coming back to Providence for the first time, Georgetown at Providence, which was on Saturday, people really started talking about it again. It's like everybody has to tune in for this game because the crowd's going to be insane. The environment's going to be insane. Like it's the game to watch. And then it kind of coincided with this documentary that had already been made, but I think was getting a lot of attention because of this game happening. And the documentary is called Divine Providence, and it was made. I should have written this down. Do you have the guy's username?
Blue Demon Degen.
Blue Demon Degen, who also had another account, Big East Films, right? Big East Films.
Yep.
Which he ended up having that account taken down because of copyright of it, people thinking he was actually involved with the Big East, which we'll get into that too, because Goodman had some stuff to say about that. That was ridiculous. But so he was kind of making like Big East documentaries through this account, Big East Films. Made this one called Divine Providence about Ed Cooley's tenure there and about him leaving, and interviewed some different people. He interviewed some people that were just random, like real Providence fans that we'll also get into some of the people in the documentary because they were very funny. He interviewed John Fanta, who is beloved in the college basketball community. Everybody loves Johnny Fanta. Shout out to Johnny Fanta too. His dad just passed away. R.I.P. to Johnny Fanta's dad. Hopefully he's doing okay. But he is kind of, and we'll talk about this too, like unfortunately kind of in the middle of this whole thing, because he has a show with Goodman and works with him and seems to be kind of like the source of where a lot of Goodman's anger came from. So we'll get into that, but let's just start with the actual just story of Cooley coaching at Providence. He went to Providence, played basketball at Providence.
So that's where Cooley didn't go to Providence. He grew up in the high school. And
okay, yeah, this is where I need you. Go ahead.
So he grew up in Providence, wanted to always be the Providence coach or play basketball at Providence, but he wasn't good enough to play. So when he got the job at Providence, it really was his dream job. He always said it. He was like, this is my dream job. He looked up to John Thompson, who was the Georgetown coach, who was at Hall, has his jersey in the rafters at the dunk. But yeah, he always wanted to be a Providence basketball player in general. So yeah, just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, no, I told Doogs before starting this, I love college basketball. In March, I'm very much tuned in and locked into what's going on, but mostly everything outside of March, I'm like constantly playing catch up throughout the year because I'm
normal.
So
you're normal. I'm a loser who tunes into like the nitty gritty of college basketball. I'm like on fan pages, on all these, how people treat college football and how they treat like the NFL. This is how I treat college basketball. I'm a nut job. I love these weird schools where they're just obsessed with college basketball.
Yeah, which is why I wanted you on here, because I'm like always like late January and February, I'm like trying to play total catch up to like know what I should be knowing going into March, so I know who to bet on and what's going on going into the tournament. So we'll kind of go through the story in line with how it kind of goes in the documentary. First of all, the documentary is awesome. If you haven't watched it, it got taken off of YouTube because of like copyright stuff, but it's been re-uploaded onto YouTube. I'm going to put the link in the description of this episode for anybody that hasn't seen it to go watch it. Because it's for somebody that just is not a professional documentary maker and just kind of like threw it together. Like, it's really well done. Like, there's some funny, like random, like jump cuts and like horror movie sound effects from like iMovie that are, which makes it very endearing. It's funny. Some of the stuff, like it'll be talking about how great Ed Cooley is, and then one of the fans will be like, yeah, that's what we thought, and then it will like play some like horror movie sound effects that are very funny. So basically Providence at a time with like Rick Pitino in the 80s and stuff like that, where it was a good program, but was always kind of the underdog, and they had kind of fallen off and were towards the bottom of the Big East. And then when Ed Cooley came in, like Doogs was saying, it was like his dream job. He had his introductory press conference there where he said it was his dream job, and this is all he ever wanted to do, was build Providence into like an elite program. And he wanted to be like a coach for life at Providence. And for a long time, he did exactly what he promised. He did build them up from a program at the bottom of the Big East into a real contender. They won a Big East regular season title while he was there. They were in multiple NCAA tournaments. Did they win NCAA tournament game? Yeah, they won.
They won some games. They made it to the Sweet 16. They lost to the eventual champ, Kansas. I mean, Cooley really. So like, just to interject for a second, you're doing a great job portraying how shit Providence was. Like when I became a fan, it was Cooley's first year, and my sisters went there, and I looked up to Cooley and all of that. But I remember going to a game her freshman year, nobody was on the camp, like nobody was there, and the way that Cooley was able to get fans to come from campus to the Dunk, which is downtown, was remarkable and completely interjected life into the program. And like he won, like you said, regular season championships, Big East tournaments. He was the man for 12 years.
Yeah, and very much his, which again we'll come into it later on, but his personality, what made him so good is that he could basically get anybody to buy in, like players and fans and whoever, like media. He got people to believe like that he was building something like really special, and it was something that was going to last, and he wanted this program to be so successful. And that was part of the reason it was so cool. It was somebody who was like his, like he said, his dream job, and was actually doing what he promised he would do and building it up. And so a lot of this, if you want to watch the whole documentary, is like a 30 to 40 minutes. Like the first 30, 40 minutes are all about like the great stuff he did. So if you really want to go into the details of that, you can there. But where it gets really interesting is obviously closer to the end, where things start to go wrong. So if you go into we'll kind of jump to like his last season at Providence, where things were still going pretty good. Like they had a good team. But then it seemed where things started to get weird was like heading into, it was senior day, right? Of the last season.
Yeah. So you could make the argument that from, at a time where he made the Sweet 16, they have 6 losses, best record ever, just won the Big East. And then what they were able to build last year, which was this last year, they bring in a top recruit in the transfer portal, Bryce Hopkins from Kentucky. They have their returning point guard, who was a star in the NCAA tournament. They have their best player on the team right now, Devin Carter, last year. I mean, you could make the argument that last year at one point that team was better than their best team ever the year before. So like everyone looks at the 2022 team as the best Providence team, like in the last like 25 years. Last year maybe was even more talented. But what happened was in the last 4 games, they go 0-4. And, there's a couple of rumors starting to circle around campus, circle around the Twitter circles. And everyone's like, what's up? What's up with this collapse? What's happened? This is so uncharacteristic of Ed Cooley and his teams to have no identity, no passion, no grit during these games, just no competitive spirit.
Yeah, because he had kind of built the whole team on, which they said was so perfect for the program, because it like represented the city of Providence and the school, like the underdog mentality. Like they built the program off of like just playing harder than their opponent, playing good defense, like being aggressive, being like the team that nobody wants to play against because they're just going to like be super physical and they're just going to try harder than you. And that's basically how they're going to win. And so then towards the end of the regular season, to have guys just like seemingly not trying just didn't make any sense. They had their senior day, last home game of the regular season, that they got blown out by an inferior team. And
which was like,
it was terrible.
They didn't win the national championship or make the Final Four. I don't even think they made the tournament, quite frankly. So to lose by 30 on senior day at home, where still to this day, the Dunk, they're like 46-3 since 2001. So it's like, everyone's like, all right, what the fuck is up? Like there's one thing losing on a buzzer beater to any team in the Big East Conference game at home, but to lose by 30 on senior night with no passion, no spirit, brought nothing. Everybody started listening to the rumors a little bit closer.
Yeah, they started to make more sense about. Obviously, the hot seat was on Patrick Ewing. The year before, they were horrible, and they were horrible again.
Big
people
East,
thought they were going to get. Yeah, people thought they were going to get that Ewing was maybe going to get fired before that season. He ended up having the job for another year, and so Georgetown was a mess. Everybody thought Ewing was going to get fired. That job was going to open up. People knew about his idol being John Thompson, so everything around that like is probably a reason for those rumors. And then obviously there was real smoke to it because he ended up taking the job. But and then they went into the Big East tournament and they lost. They ended up being a close game at the end, but they were down like 20 at one point in the game against UConn, who to be fair ended up being the national champions. So it's not like it's a totally embarrassing loss. But again, they went out in the Big East tournament, but still were going into March, and they were going up against Kentucky in the first round, right?
Yep, they're going up against Kentucky, dragging themselves into the tournament. And, the week leading up to that game, people are asking him, so can you put down these rumors? Well, you put down the rumors that you're not accepting the Georgetown job, that you're not accepting any job. And he was like, like these are like the way they kind of, you can watch it in the documentary, the way that he answers the questions are very much not what you're looking for your head coach to say, even if he's taking the job. I'm not saying that he had to turn down the rumors. Can't be a liar, but it was very much like he was fucking with the media and he didn't have control of his locker room at that point from a biased point of view.
Yeah, because again, as a guy that basically built the program on being like totally himself and not afraid to say whatever he wanted and kind of totally going off having like very charismatic personality, when he was in these interviews that they show in the documentary, he's using total like coach speak, which wasn't his personality at all, being like, I'm just focused on Kentucky. I'm worried about the Kentucky game. They're like, there's all these rumors, are you going to take the job? And he's like, I'm only worried about Kentucky, which if you follow any sport anywhere, like that is basically code for like, yeah, the rumors are true, but like, I just can't talk about it right now.
Yeah. And this is a guy this is the guy also that came up with the saying, if somebody wore if somebody was on campus at Providence and was wearing a Georgetown shirt, he'd take them to the bookstore and get him a Providence jersey or a Providence gear. If they were wearing any other school's merch, Coach Cooley was a figure that would legitimately bring you to the bookstore to get you a new shirt. He's a guy that like came up with sayings such as like, us, we together, family friars. He was Providence College. If you went to Providence College during like your 4 years that Cooley was there, Coach Cooley is part of you. He was just as important as, Father Shanley, who's now with St. John's. I mean, these are guys that Providence College students know what I'm talking about. Coach Cooley was a part of them. He was a part of the campus. He was a part of the culture, not just for the basketball team, but for the entire city and the school.
Yeah. So gets into this game against Kentucky, everything going into it really is starting to look like he's out, and they go into the game against Kentucky. They obviously lose. I don't know if you know the actual score of the game, but was the game close at all, or did they?
I mean, I think it was like an 11-point game for like, it was like, I mean, you're really filling out your bracket. Anybody with a pulse knows that like, that was Providence never had like a shot. It was
they weren't really in it.
61-53, and Providence's best player, Bryce Hopkins, went to Kentucky. So like, you kind of would be like, oh, like I knew when they lost that game that he was out, because if Coach Cooley had a player like Bryce Hopkins, who's their best player, who he took from Kentucky, and to not really like have a fight in the game, it was pretty much like an 8-point game the entire time. I remember.
Yeah. Yeah, because normally a storyline like that, having like a coach like that, that's all about like thriving off of like motivation and everything, having a storyline of like, like Kentucky didn't want you, that's why you came here, like to prove them wrong. Like that whole thing in a different world would set up perfectly for that to be like one of the prime upsets of the first round, that like Providence was built on like, that's the team you don't want to play like as an underdog in a tournament setting. Like that should be like one of the scariest teams to play against, and they just weren't in that setting. And they lost, and then from there is when things really started to spiral, both in real life and if you're watching the documentary. It kind of cuts from, you could always kind of obviously what happens in real life at the end, but everything in the documentary was like giving him like a bit of like his fair dues of like what he did for the program and like what kind of guy he was. And really after that game is then where it turns to like, there's the rumors about how he'd put his house on the market, and apparently he had put his house on the market like weeks before the tournament game, and there was something about like he was denying that it was his house on the market, but like the pictures on like Zillow are like of like framed like Providence players jerseys and like the pool in the backyard that like he had posted videos of like him with recruits in the pool and all this stuff, that it was like, dude, everybody knows this is your house and you're just like pretending like this isn't real, that you're selling your house. And which again, this is what makes from an unbiased perspective, it is what makes college sports so great, is like the tracking flights and like people putting their house on sale, and like, oh, we saw like the coach's wife at like at schools and in the DC area, like touring schools for the kids. Like that stuff is what's fun about college sports, is like tracking that kind of stuff. But basically he did, and then again, this is where the documentary takes a real turn, where it's kind of playing both sides of it a bit. And then there's the one Providence fan who drops without a doubt the line of the documentary where he said, I think I've called him Hitler like 500 times on Twitter, and I don't think it's inappropriate by any means. Which
and then he's like,
I think
he's like, you know, I'm not saying that he's like what Hitler did was worse. All I'm saying is he's like basketball Hitler. Like
I'm not trying to,
I'm not trying to apologize for what I'm about to say, but
yeah, he basically said he was Hitler and then realized that's maybe like a crazy thing to say on like a documentary that's going to go out to the public with his name on it. And instead of being like, I mean, not really Hitler, but he was like, no, but he kind of was Hitler. Like,
like in a basketball sense, it's like he killed programs. I was like, everyone's like looking around. That guy I saw him on Saturday. Hilarious guy. Stuck to his guns is what I'll say. You know, it wasn't a guy that was looking to take back his words, not apologetic. I mean, I can respect a man like that. You know, I won't be calling Coach Cooley Hitler, but you know, if he wants to call him basketball Hitler, God bless him.
Yeah, and again, you can say like that's going too far, or crossing a line or whatever. But again, the same as all this other stuff, the reason college sports are the best. I'm more of a college football guy than college basketball guy, but the reason I think college football is better than the NBA isn't because of like the product on the field. It's everything like around college football with stuff like that. And the fans are insane. And that's what makes it the best. So if you don't have the guy that legitimately thinks he's basketball Hitler, then college sports aren't as special as they are. So you need guys like that out there. And then also where I feel like where it really goes into where like the drama comes from with Goodman and stuff, I feel like is mostly around the affair stuff, which I guess there were rumors that part of the reason he had to get out of Providence and go take a different job and go to Georgetown is because he had cheated on his wife, and possibly with like a Providence student or with maybe multiple people in like the Providence community. And he kind of had to like, all that information was getting out there that he had done this. And so he had to kind of like get out of the situation altogether. And they talk about it in the documentary, and everybody seems kind of like, you don't hear the guy that made the document, Blue Demon Degen, you don't hear him asking the questions. You just kind of see the responses from the people. But most of the people are kind of like, yeah, I heard about it, but like, I don't know. Like nobody really wanted to say like, for sure, because nobody knows for sure, I guess, unless any people that were involved. But I feel like that's where things, from somebody like Jeff Goodman's perspective, was like, okay, now you're like crossing a line of some sort of like potentially like ruining this guy's life past like basketball. And that's maybe from where I was watching, because I was watching the whole documentary. I didn't watch it until after all this stuff with Jeff Goodman had already happened. So I knew there was all this like, it was inappropriate and he was going to get sued for making it and all this stuff. So I was watching it with the lens of like, okay, what is so bad in this that like this guy could get sued or whatever. And so I feel like that's probably where people think he maybe crossed like a line.
So I think from from my perspective, it's more, was there rumors about him having an affair with getting pulled over by the police and the mistress being in the car? Providence folks will tell you tales about getting caught in a hotel lobby with a mistress. Look, I don't know if it's true or not. I don't. I know 2 + 2 = 4. I know that what Ed Cooley had was a chance to have Providence be a top 1 or 2 team in the Big East for years to come. He's 55 years old, so whatever, 65, 50, 60 years old. It's not like he wants to be told fans that he wants to be coach, like take a job for the next 5 years and maybe retire, do television. Doesn't make sense just to go to Georgetown and build up a program that's dead. Now, like I said earlier, he did look up to John Thompson when John Thompson played at Providence. So if he wants to help resurrect Georgetown, so be it. Oh, he left for more money? If nobody thinks that Providence would have paid just as much money for him to stay at Providence and not go to Georgetown, lunacy. Makes no sense to me. I think that if I had to so I'm not going to say that he cheated on his wife because I have no place to say that, but I will say this. If he did cheat on his wife and his wife told him that he has to get out of Providence, what I would do if I was Ed Cooley is I would go to Georgetown. Because where did Ed Cooley succeed? The Big East. Where does he know how to recruit? The Big East. Where does he know how to win? The Big East. Now, Georgetown obviously has more money. Maybe people want to make the argument that Ed Cooley didn't have the NIL at Providence. I disagree with that. I think that Providence would have definitely had the backers. But I think that him going to a different Big East school isn't crazy because it wouldn't make sense for him and where he knew how to recruit to go to a school like Michigan or Texas or an SEC school, an ACC school. I think staying in the Big East, he knew that he fucked up, but I think he knew that was the best place for him to win was in the Big East. So I'm not putting down the rumors that he didn't cheat on his wife, but I'm not saying that he cheated on his wife.
Yeah, obviously.
Do I kind of believe it? Yes, but I know I'm not going to say that.
Obviously, we don't know, but
right, exactly.
It does make sense that there would be something more than basketball going on.
Correct.
Where what he considered to be his dream job and all this stuff, he left for a school that people, if you really want to, I know I watched the healthy debate video with you and Rico's trying to make the argument that Georgetown is a better job. And if you really want, like, there are some arguments you could make into the history of Georgetown and their history of like 30 years ago. It's not even 40 years ago. Even it's really old history. They're by no means a better program right now and by no means a better team to be at. So it does make sense that there would be something more than basketball going on for him leaving. But so that's basically how the documentary ends, is with all these different reasons for why he maybe left the job, and basically saying the final verdict is that he's like a total scumbag for leaving, and especially for the way he left, kind of quitting on the team towards the end and kind of driving down their season in his last season there, and then immediately leaving for another job in the same conference, which in college basketball in general is brutal, but in the Big East especially, it just doesn't happen. I think
hasn't happened.
He was the first coach to go to a different Big East program. And like, I'm in not exactly the same situation, but like, I'm a big Liverpool fan in soccer, and Jurgen Klopp, their coach, just announced that he's leaving at the end of the season, more just because he said he's like just tired and ready to have a break from coaching. And in his like exit press conference, he made it incredibly clear, maybe I'll coach again one day, but there's a 0% chance I will ever coach another team in England that's not Liverpool, which is, for me, like what you want to hear from your coach leaving. Because then it's so obvious, like, I'm not doing this to take another job. I'm not doing this to go do something else. Like, I'm just ready to move on and close this kind of chapter for me. But he's like, if I ever coach again, it won't be in this league. Like, I would never coach another team in this league. And that's like, in my mind, it's like, okay, you can't really like fault the guy, like if he's doing what's best for him. Mm-hmm. And so it's the same thing. Like if Ed Cooley did have some, like, even if some of these rumors are true, like he cheated on his wife or whatever, and it's like he totally needs to just get out of Providence and needs like a change of scenery. It's like, you don't have to go take a job at like a rival. And maybe that's, like you said, was best for his career because he thought he could succeed there. But it's such a, just like, again, there's a reason that nobody else has ever done it, is it's just a total scumbag move to go to another team in the conference.
It just does not make sense. It really doesn't. He had a chance to be in the, like, legitimately, like it was always like Villanova UConn, or it was always Villanova at the top, Creighton, whatever, however you want to do that, like order 1, 2, 3. Providence had a real chance to be 1 and 2 in the conference for years to come. He could have had a statue built outside. He could have made $5.5 million, maybe even $6 million. They would have matched. It did not make sense. It does not make sense why he'd want to go to Georgetown at all. I mean, I really think that if you're an outsider listening in and you got to just look into the situation, you just got to do the math yourself and be like, there's clearly an outside factor. What is it? And I'm telling you right now, it's not money. I doubt it's NIL. I mean, maybe you look at the DMV and recruiting, sure. Like if he thinks it's the national championship, I think these are all factors that came together into his decision on why he went to where he went. But
yeah, it gave him a good excuse, basically.
Yeah, and
like
I
there
think
were
that,
some reasons that he could make into an excuse.
And I don't know if you want to dive into this yet about the Jeff Goodman stuff.
Yeah, we can do that now.
Yeah, I mean, just going off that, like Jeff Goodman from my point of view, yeah. What he said to the Blue Demon Degenerate was basically he's threatening a 22-year-old kid.
So I wrote some of these quotes down. I'll read the exact words. So he DM'd the kid that made this. That, again, I don't know who he is, but if he's a 22-year-old kid, like a random guy on Twitter, basically, that was just not even a Providence fan.
Exactly. He just wanted to make Big East movies on rivalries. And this was a talking point that got released a week before the game.
Yeah. And based on everything that we've said and everything in the documentary, like we said, like all these things, even if some of them are rumors, like they totally have, like, there's reason to believe a lot of them. And it's not like in the documentary, they said like, this is true, he cheated on his wife. It's like, these were storylines that went into why he left. And so it's totally fair to put that into a documentary about him leaving, because it could be potentially like a major reason why. So to address them is totally fair. And like we said earlier with Johnny Fanta, like he was interviewed for it and he didn't say anything about these rumors, anything that's like could be construed as like him trashing Ed Cooley. He didn't say anything bad about Ed Cooley, really. John Fanta was basically there to just give some like real college basketball journalist, reporter, commentator, like takes on what happened. And he didn't say anything bad in it. And according to Blue Demon Degen, it seems like he sent like a cut of it to Fanta, and Fanta even like asked him to take out a couple of things that he must have originally said. So it seemed like he was totally transparent about like, here's what it's going to be. Is this cool with you? Fanta said, yeah, it's cool with me. And then Jeff Goodman ends up DMing this guy after it comes out. And these are a couple of the things word for word that Goodman said to Blue Demon Degen. He said, "You honestly might lose a lot of money for this. In the off season, when I have time, I will track down who you are." And then the now famous line, "How do you look in orange?"
How do you look in
Basically,
orange?
How do you look in orange? Which now, if you go to any of Jeff Goodman's tweets, all the replies and quote tweets are just about how Jeff Goodman's going to look in orange. Basically threatening this 22-year-old kid because he didn't look like how the documentary came out.
He didn't like that it was, he put it under Big East Films, and that professional, I love Fanta. So like, I'm not even trying to get into this, but Fanta, if you think it's with the Big East, you work with the Big East, you'd probably know if Big East Films existed. This is clearly a 22-year-old kid on the other side of a Zoom that you're on. Like, it's a fan documentary, and it just angered me so much because I just need to get this off my chest. For Jeff Goodman is a piece of shit. Jeff Goodman is somebody who's always on their high horse, thinks that they're always on the moral high ground, and that he's never made a mistake in his life. I've made mistakes like on social media, whatever you want to say, especially in the college basketball world. And like Jeff Goodman has tried to like reprimand me, Marty Mush, just like a couple of people, and he still does things wrong to this day. And this is one example. And he reprimands people that for example, there's a college basketball account called College Basketball Report, and they put out top 50 arenas. And Jeff Goodman will DM College Basketball Report and be like, well, how many venues have you actually been to? And he's like, I don't know, none, but just like trying to like make some like fan engagement. And Jeff Goodman's like, well, next time, how would you go to someone that's actually been to all the arenas? And he just talks down to people that are trying to break into this industry. I do not like him at all. I do not respect him at all. And I think that the shit that he got on Twitter the other day was totally totally justified.
Yeah. So that was the other interesting part of it for me, as not like totally in the college basketball space, is I knew who Jeff Goodman was just as like a guy on Twitter who had like some basketball shows and as like a reporter. But it seemed like people were like waiting for a moment to like be like, yeah, this guy's always been like a piece of shit, because obviously this stuff came out and it was crazy that he like the DMs got posted that he sent this kid, and they're like ridiculous and so like over the top, and so, like you're gonna like sue this kid and like saying, oh, you probably won't serve jail time. Like he was like being such a like pretentious asshole to this kid that just was trying to like make some interesting content. And it seemed like anybody who's any sort of like college basketball content person or anything was like ready to be like, oh yeah, I've never really said it because I didn't want to like cause problems, but like he's like sent me these DMs and he's been like a dick to me about these things before. So it seemed like he's kind of always been this guy, and this was just like kind of the big moment for everybody to be like, yeah, this is like who he is.
Yeah, he's also somebody that like will be like, hey, congrats on this move. Wish I could have scooped it. And then like he thinks the world owes him something. Nobody owes you shit, Jeff. Nobody owes you a thing. And you know, he has a daughter, and I think that like his daughter will say like has gotten some unfair treatment on Twitter by some fans because of her dad's behavior. But I will say this, Jeff, to you. The way that you talk to the Blue Demon DeGen, who's probably your daughter's age or around your daughter's age, who's trying to break in through films or whatever, and is just trying to have fun with this hobby, like pretend like it's your daughter. Treat every random account like it's your son or daughter that's around that age. Like your daughter's trying to break in. She's got it a lot easier than most people. You know, she has a dad that's broke into the industry. So like when someone's trying to break in, you don't have to talk down to them and be a complete utter asshole. And that's just one of the things that completely irked me and sent me the wrong way was how he treated Blue Demon DeGen, who's clearly like a college student or just graduated.
Yeah.
And so annoying.
Yeah, and I didn't know about his daughter, but again, like obviously if you're somebody who's like going at his daughter, like you're a douchebag too, like you shouldn't do that.
Sure.
But yeah, you'd think to somebody with the perspective of like, oh, what is it like for somebody trying to like a young person trying to like make it in this like very competitive like sports content space, like, and it's just like trying to put out something interesting, that you would like get their perspective and get where they're coming from. Which makes it crazy. And so I don't know how you say this. Rob Doster, is this the guy that?
Yeah, Rob Doster. Yeah,
that he also does the show with, who also tweeted at this guy and said like he should be focused on finding an attorney or something like that. And like it seems like both of these guys are just scumbags. And honestly, again, from an outsider's perspective who consumes just like some random college basketball stuff here and there, like Johnny Fanta seems like the best guy of all time, and somebody needs to like rescue him from having to do content with these guys that seem like total scumbags.
Yeah, and I will say like, so I if you don't know, I hate Jeff Goodman. Rob Doster, I think that is a guy that I don't know too well, but I will give him the benefit of the doubt in most scenarios. I think it comes down to this. I'm not sure. Did you see Jeff Goodman's apology last night, or made it?
Yeah, so I was going to talk about that. He basically put out a video saying that he knows the DMs were, he said, a bad look, and he was basically like, it was a half-assed apology where he was like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have DM'd that stuff to him, but like still I think what he did was like he still shouldn't have made the documentary. And he said what we talked about earlier, where he was like, oh, you shouldn't have had an account called Big East Films, where it seemed like you were associated with the league.
Yeah.
Where again, anyone with a brain knows that that's not the actual Big East.
Just look it up. Just like, how would you call yourself a professional and like not look it up? Like, if you don't want to be on something, like you work in the Big East, how do you not know that the Big East Films doesn't exist? And so that's what he was also looping in. You nailed everything, but also, so like you said earlier in the show, Fanta's dad died, so they didn't really want to talk about it right away when the shit hit the fan. But Goodman almost is like trying to be like, we were just like looking out for Johnny, because like Johnny like signed up for this documentary. He didn't really know what he's getting himself into. John is 30 fucking years old. John can stick up for himself. And I get that like Goodman and Doster, they were looking out for Fanta. They're like, I don't know. Like, I doubt that Fanta professionally wants to be involved in a documentary where like Cooley, who has a great relationship, is compared to Hitler, and they allude to his cheating. Like, so I get why Fanta didn't do that, but Fanta, again, you're 30 years old, you are a professional. You got to do some research if it's Big East Films. You got to do some research into who's creating the documentary. You had chances to watch the documentary, The Final Cut. That's on you at some point. If you don't do it, you can't just have Goodman and Doster harassing a kid, because you were professional enough to look all this shit up. And again, this is from John Fanta fanboy. Like, I love Fanta, but I mean, I think that it's like they're sticking up for Fanta like he's a 22-year-old while they're attacking a 22-year-old. So that's why the whole thing weirds me the fuck out.
Yeah, so my interpretation, and again, this is just like based on everything I've seen, kind of how I interpret probably how the situation went, is that I'm guessing Fanta did this because he's a good guy, like he's a really good guy, and some kid reached out and was like, will you do this? And Fanta was like, sure, I'll talk to you for 20 minutes or whatever, and you can use it. And he saw it and he was like, whatever, like, and Fanta probably didn't think too much of it. And then it comes out, and Goodman and maybe Doster too are like, hey, what the hell is this thing that you were in? Like this, like it's totally like over the line, and like going after Cooley. And Fanta probably somewhat wanting to just like appease these guys, or like, oh yeah, like, I don't know, like the kid wanted me to do it. I was just doing it to be nice. I didn't really realize like how hard he was going to go, and was probably just kind of like to appease like Goodman, and like to be like, oh yeah, like they probably went a little too hard on him. Like, I didn't know they were going to go that hard. Like, just to kind of like thinking nothing of it. And then Fanta was probably just going to ignore it and just let it go away, which it totally would have. Like, this would have been a pretty, like, it's not like this guy is like, again, it's not like this was going out on like the Barstool main channel, for example. Like, this is a pretty small time guy who like maybe like a few hundred, couple thousand people at most, like, we're going to watch this. And so Fanta was probably smart enough to just be like, this thing is just going to go away. I didn't actually say anything bad. Like, I'm just going to let it go away. And then Goodman, feeling like he had to be like the white knight for
summed it up
for Fanta, like you said, like
moral high ground. He's got
going into this being like, you did my guy wrong. And in his apology video, he said, like, I think exactly what he said is like, I was just trying to defend my guy and back my guy, and not saying his name when we all know exactly who he's talking about, is in some ways like completely throwing Fanta under the bus, actually saying like, oh, the only reason I sent these super shitty DMs to this kid is because the guy I work with like went on to this documentary like not knowing what it was going to be, basically saying like Fanta's too dumb to like know what was going to happen, so I have to come in and defend him, so I'm the good guy, when in reality Fanta, again, he's going through a hard time personally, so who knows, like in a different world maybe what he would have come out and said about it. But Fanta hasn't said anything about it, and seemingly was probably just going to like let it go away. And the fact that Goodman had to step in and pretend to be like this hero defending Fanta is what has actually turned it into what it now is.
Well, yeah, because Goodman's a great guy, and he's just got to always just, he's such a good guy that he asked Bobby and Danny Hurley if their dad ever hit them with a belt. So like, that's the type of guy that Goodman is. And I don't like to bring that up all the time, but like, it's like, he just stands on this moral high ground where he's got skeletons in the closet. And this isn't like a Jeff Goodman thing. This is everybody. Everybody in sports content, everybody in sports media has skeletons in the closet. When you stand on this high ground that you're better than everyone, or that you are a better person than other people, shut the fuck up. Your day will come. It comes for everybody at some point. Some worse than others, but their days come for everybody.
Yeah, we've seen it a million times. Like, you working at Barstool, it's like the perfect example. Like, it's always these people that come for Barstool for like things that have been said like 10 years ago or something taken out of context. And it's always that person that puts themselves out there for having this moral high ground. It's always like takes 5 minutes to go into their background and be like, you've done something exactly the same, if not worse. And like anybody that tries to pretend that they're better than anybody else, like it's always because they're compensating for something and because they feel like they need to like make up for something they've done in the past. And so they need to like pretend to be this moral high ground, and it never works out. So,
and once you look into Jeff Goodman, that'll all check out.
Yeah. And it's exactly what we saw. Like it's somebody like this and there are a lot of people that maybe because he is like a higher profile guy in college basketball, or just because other people aren't pieces of shit that feel the need to like expose somebody for doing something shitty, that he hasn't been maybe called out to this extent in the past. But it seems like something like this comes up. And like I said earlier, people were just kind of waiting for an excuse to be like, yeah, this is who this guy is. Like, this is what he's done to me. This is what he's done to somebody I know. Like, this is just who this guy is. So if you're going to be this person that pretends to be better than everybody else, you better have 0 skeletons in your closet, which nobody
it's
has.
Awesome.
So.
It's awesome because he also, there's also the other side where he's just in every coach's pants. Like, have an opinion. And I know that like even like last year, like him and Dave had a tiff about when Cooley left, and he's all in Cooley's pants about the entire thing and was all team Cooley, pro Cooley, which is like fine to take that stance. But when Dave invites you to come talk about it and you run away because you don't want to have an honest conversation about it, can't respect you as a man.
Yeah. It's because you don't have any ground to stand on, and you just want to pretend like you're better than everybody else. So that's basically it. That's the story of this Divine Providence documentary. Ed Cooley, he went to Providence. Providence won, for anybody that didn't watch that game. It was awesome. I mean, we could go on forever how deep the conspiracy might go. They're turning down the crowd volume on the Fox broadcast, so you can't hear some of the chants that were going on. All different kinds of stuff. I totally believe it, because I tuned in for the game. Again, I don't watch a ton of regular season college basketball, and I was like, I got to watch this game. And even though it was loud, like you could hear some stuff, but you could tell, like, I know it's got to be crazier in person than what I'm hearing.
It was the things that they were saying that had to be muted. It was at one point the Devin Carter dunk to solidify the win for Providence was the loudest I've ever heard in an arena in my life, and that includes Assembly Hall, Breslin, everywhere. Yeah,
so that's that story. The moral of the story is Jeff Goodman is a scumbag, and it looks like I don't know if you know more than me. It looks like there's more to come from Blue Demon to Jen. He has more in the works, and so maybe we'll see some more documentaries from him in the future.
He's got a fan in me.
Me too. After this, and I wanted to close this out before we go by giving you a quick minute or two platform on why anybody should bet Dayton to make the Final Four or to win the national championship.
This is a team that's getting better defensively. It's one of the best offenses in the country. They have the best player in the country, named Zach Edey. Shooters surrounded by them. Live by the three, die by the three. This is the University of Miami team of last year, but a better defense and one of the best players in the country that you will find out about in March. Look, if you're just learning about the Dayton Flyers right now, you're too late.
There you go. You're too late, but you should still bet them to make the Final Four to win the national.
And if you want me to an honest take, if you're filling out your bracket and you want like a little team that can make a run, like this is like an FAU from last year. This is like a Miami. It's a team that's getting better. It has a great individual pieces defensively, individually, but collectively they're getting better together as a group. They can fucking shoot the lights out of the ball, and even a bad game, they can still win you.
There you go. Actually, there was one more thing that I actually want to end on. as a college basketball guy, I want your opinion because I am University of South Carolina graduate. Their basketball team has been nothing to care about the past few years, but they're on fire. They just beat top 5 team Tennessee on the road. Are they legit? Have you watched enough to know if they're legit?
They are legit. You have a great coach over there. I think that's a team that after last night's win has solidified themselves as like a legitimate, can they actually win the regular season SEC? The SEC is one of the most, I don't even want to call them underrated, but I mean, that's a fucking like powerhouse of a schedule right now. You got like Tennessee, Auburn, Bama, South Carolina's no joke. Kentucky, like these are teams that like Kentucky and Bama are Final Four good to me. And Tennessee's
Auburn.
Tennessee, they'll lose. Yeah, Auburn, but like, I don't know if I drink the Auburn juice as much as other people are, but even like a Tennessee, they got Dalton Connect. It's like they got their defense who will be their defense, but they'll probably lose in the Sweet 16 like they always do. But yeah, I'm drinking the South Carolina juice pretty hard. I think it's one of the best defenses in the country. If they can keep shooting the ball like they have been recently in conference play, I mean, they'll be totally fun. I'm drinking the juice.
Yeah, when I was in school is when they went to the Final Four with Sindarius Thornwell and that team. And I went to like every game of that run. I got like student tickets for the Final Four game, went to the Final Four. They lost to Gonzaga in the Final Four, but I was at that game. It was unbelievable. And so since then things have like not been great. And so I've kind of been like tuned out of their basketball program. But the last few weeks I've been like, oh, this might be like for real. And watching that game against Tennessee, like you're talking about Dalton Connect, played one of like the best games I've ever seen a college basketball player play. He was insane, hitting every single shot. And the fact that they still won that game on the road was insane. So I'm excited about it. But thanks for coming on and doing this. This was it was good to get your perspective and kind of dive into this. Hopefully people that have not really known how to figure out this whole Goodman situation can watch this and know what the deal is.
Thanks for having me on, man. I love talking college basketball. If you ever need some help during March Madness, just send me a DM or whatever.
Yeah, I will. And you just put out a video today it's on the Healthy Debates channel, right?
Yeah.
On YouTube.
It's a man on the street captured the energy that was at Providence. And by energy, I mean every curse word in the book. They'll let you know how they felt about Ed Cooley and his return. It was a bunch of fun. We put out some videos from that trip. So if you want to check them out, go to Healthy Debate channel right now. Thanks for letting me plug that.
Yeah. So if you're into this story after listening to this, make sure to check that out. And that's it. Thanks for tuning in and talk to you next time.